So here's something that's been bugging me for months. Everyone keeps saying, oh, interest rates were way higher back in the day whenever we talk about housing affordability. Yeah, it's true. My parents paid about 15% interest on their mortgage in the early 90s. But here's the thing. After I actually sat down and did the math, I realized something pretty shocking. Even with those crazy high interest rates, my parents, yes, had it way easier than buyers today. So today, I'm going to walk you through the actual numbers, and I think you're going to be pretty surprised by what we'll find. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, I'm Cameron Brio, a realtor in Moncton, New Brunswick. Every week, I make videos about buying, selling, and investing in the Canadian real estate market. And today, we're diving into something that I think is really important to understand, especially if you're feeling frustrated about housing affordability. Oh, and if you want to explore what your money can actually buy in New Brunswick, there is a link down in the description and you can book a call with me. Let's get into it. So let me tell you about my parents' experience buying a home in the early 90s. They were living in Toronto, and like a lot of young families, they needed more space. So they decided to move to Burlington, which at the time was a brand new suburb, all of the new construction homes you could imagine. They found this new construction home from a builder, and it was 1991, and interest rates were around 13%. Can you imagine? Everyone thought that they were absolutely crazy. But here's what it actually looked like in terms of the math. The average household income back then was around $45,000 to $50,000. So my dad was making, let's say, $45,000 a year for this example. So that $250,000 house was about 5.5 times his annual income. They put down 50 grand, which they got from selling their smaller place in Toronto. So their mortgage was $200,000. Their monthly payment was about $2,500 plus the property taxes and insurance. So all in, they were probably around $2,800 a month for housing. Now on a $45,000 salary, that's like 75% of their gross income going towards housing. And yes, I will agree, that sounds completely insane. But here's the key thing that made it work. Wages were growing really fast back then. By 1995, according to my dad, he got a pay increase and was making more, 2000 even more, and still that mortgage payment was around $2,500 a month. So within just a few years, that payment went from being about 75% of the income to 45%. The mortgage stayed the same, but the income kept going up. Now, let's look at what buying a similar type property available today in Burlington would look like. So let's take a newer construction home. You're looking at about 1.2 million, maybe even more. And the household income in that area is about 80,000. So that house costs 15 times the annual income. Yes, 15 times. So let's say you put down 10%, that's 120,000. Your mortgage would be about $1.08 million. And at today's rates, let's say somewhere around 5%, it would be about $6,800 a month. And then there's property taxes and insurance and other expenses that you need to consider to operate that house. On an $80,000 salary, that's like 120% of your gross income. Before taxes, it's literally impossible. Even if we look at the national average home price, around $750K, your mortgage payment is about $4,200 a month. So your total housing costs are about $5,500. And that's still 80% of your gross income. After taxes, you're spending more than 100% of your take-home income. And that's just on housing. And yes, I know, it does not work. So here's where things get really interesting. Let's look at the total cost of ownership over the life of the mortgage. So looking at my parents, that $200K mortgage with that crazy interest rate over 25 years, they paid about $764,000 for the house and about $564 in interest. And in the other scenario that I mentioned, that $1.08 million at a 5% rate on 25 years, the total cost is $1.83 million with interest of $750,000. So today's buyers pay 2.5 times more in total, but we need to account for inflation, right? When I adjust my parents' payments for inflation, that $764K equals $1.4 million in today's money. So the real difference is the 1990s cost adjusted for inflation is about 1.4 million and the 2025 cost is 1.8 million. So that's about an extra 400K. But the real shocking part is that my parents' total payment represented about 17 years of average income back then. Today's payment represents 23 years of average income. And remember, my parents' mortgage payment became easier to handle every year as the wages grew. Today's buyers, their wages aren't growing like that anymore. From 2015 to 2025, the average wages went up about 14% total. Meanwhile, house prices doubled in most markets. So not only are you paying more, but that payment isn't getting easier over time like it did for my parents. This is really the key to understanding why things feel so different now. In the 90s, you could count on your income growing pretty predictably. Inflation was higher, but so was the wage growth. My dad's income was up about 44% in 10 years. Compare that to today, wages have only gone up 14% in 10 years. Meanwhile, the cost of everything else, especially housing, has skyrocketed in those major cities. So my parents could take on what seemed like a huge mortgage payment because they knew that they could make it manageable within the next few years. Today's buyers are looking at payments that might actually get harder to handle over time and not easier. That is completely different than my parents had it. Today's buyers are looking at payments that might actually get harder to handle over time and not easier. That's a completely different psychological situation. When my parents bought their house, they were optimistic about the future. Today's buyers are worried about whether they'll even be able to afford their payments 5 years from now. That is a huge difference. You're a few minutes in. What do you do with this information? First, don't let it discourage you completely. My parents' story shows us that the equity ladder still works. That $250K home that they bought, well, it's worth over $1.2 million today. And yes, they did ride that equity ladder until they sold it, but your strategy has to be different. Here are 3 approaches that can still work. And number 1, I'm calling geographic arbitrage. You will look for markets where you can still get that 5 to 6 times income ratio. Like here in Moncton, you can find a great house for $300,000 to $400,000. If you're making $60,000 a year, that's about 6 times your income, and it's much more manageable. Number 2 is start smaller. Your parents might have been able to buy their dream home right away. You might need to start with a condo or a semi and build some equity and then trade up. Number 3 is focus on income growth. Since some wages are not growing automatically like they used to, you need to be a bit more intentional. Look for skills training or a career change, or maybe even a side hustle that can significantly increase your income over the next 5 to 7 years. The key is to getting into a market somewhere, somehow, even if it's not your ideal home or location. But once you're building equity, you can use that to move up the ladder. I know it's probably not what you want to hear, but it can make home ownership a reality. Here's what really happened over the last 30 years. Interest rates dropped from 15 to 5%, but house prices went up to 400%. Wage growth slowed down while asset prices exploded. Government policies ended up favoring people who already owned assets over first-time buyers, and we got more foreign investment and speculation driving prices beyond what local incomes could support. The result? We created a system where owning assets builds wealth faster than working does. If you own real estate, you get richer. If you don't, you could fall further behind every year. My parents' generation could work their way into home ownership. Today, you often need help from family or you move into a different market. But here's the thing, opportunity still exists. It's not in the same places that it used to. It could be markets like New Brunswick or Nova Scotia or Saskatchewan. Some areas in Alberta, they still offer that 1990s style affordability. You just have to be willing to look beyond the traditional hot markets. So here's the bottom line. Your parents didn't just benefit from different interest rates. They lived through the last era when housing prices were actually tied to local incomes. The math worked differently back then, but that doesn't mean it can't work for you. It just means you need a different approach. Focused on income ratios first, not just interest rates. Be flexible about location. Start building equity somewhere, even if it's not your dream home. And remember, every year you wait, the math typically gets a bit worse. But don't let this discourage you. Let the information form your strategy. Your parents had timing on their side. You have knowledge and options they didn't have. So use them wisely. All right, if this gave you a new perspective on Canadian real estate and affordability, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you want more videos that break down the numbers instead of just repeating the same old talking points. If you are thinking about making a move to a market where the math still makes sense, like New Brunswick, there is a link down in the description where you can book a call with me. I would love to show you what your money can actually buy you in a market that still works for regular people. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.